everybody, a warm welcome to Wisdom from North. My name is Jannicke and I'm now at Tønsberg at the Evolving Consciousness Conference in Norway. And there are a lot of wonderful spiritual teachers here, and among them, Dr. Norma Milanovich. Did I say it correctly?
Milanovich.
She is a previous professor in education at the University of New Mexico. But in the 80s, she started having experiences and she started communicating with beings from another planet who call themselves the Arcturians. And this led to the book, We the Arcturians. Mm-hmm. And later on, she also had contact with Ascended Masters, and she has written the book Sacred Journey to Atlantis and The Light Shall Set You Free, which she co-wrote with Shirley MacCune. Now, Norma, thank you so much for taking time before this conference, and welcome to Norway.
Oh, it's wonderful to be back.
Oh, you've been there before?
Yes, I have. I've done workshops as long as 20 years ago. In Norway, Sweden, Denmark. I've been coming over here to England, many of the countries for a long time.
How wonderful. Now I've been doing research on you, and you have quite an amazing story. And I'm thinking that we can go from the beginning in a way, because you have one foot, in the academic world and another one in the metaphysical world. And from what I understood, your life turned upside down when you were 40. Can you explain what happened and how that process was?
Well, I was a professor at that time, and I would consider myself to be, quote, normal, compared to the standards for people today on the planet. And from one moment to the next, around my 40th birthday, I suddenly acquired all of these skills and these abilities to have psychic cognition. I would know things before they happened. I could literally read people's minds, and all of these things started happening to me, but I didn't know where to put it. I didn't know how to deal with it, yet I knew that I was still the same person. And so for a while, I tried to figure it out. And then following that, I started being acquainted with books, and I would do some reading. Occasionally some people would come in that would be like my teachers, and then I would come in, learn something from them, watch something, and everything synchronistically started falling in my lap. So everything I needed was handed to me in a very gentle way so that I could figure it out and I could become empowered. Well, that did change my life, because before that, I was in academia. I was doing nothing but research and helping graduate students, with their doctoral dissertations and theses and everything that was required to be a professor at that university. And so it made me take notice, and slowly but surely I began to figure things out, that I was on a spiritual path. The veil, as they say, the veil had been lifted from me. And ultimately then, I was almost like in a different world. But I had to live in the third dimension. You have to pay your bills. You have to be responsible on your job. And all of that I could do because I had the habits. And I was always that kind of person. But that's what happened to me. The veil was lifted, and my world changed.
But before that, had you been interested in things like this, metaphysical things?
Not really. I was born and raised Catholic, and in school I had the nuns as a child. I was always spiritual. I was always aligned with what I call the higher principles of what they were teaching at the time. I had a spiritual connection to God, and all of that was set. But to be born and raised in that religion, they keep things, I think deliberately over the past, things like reincarnation and things away from the people. I don't know the reason why. Maybe it was power and control years ago. Doesn't make any difference today. But the point is that I had no background. I didn't know what was happening to me because that wasn't in my world. So therefore it made me go outward, and I had to seek for my answers in the world around, but I was very careful not to do anything that would harm my reputation, because I had a very good reputation in education. I was a national speaker at conferences, and I got high evaluations from my students, and everything that I did, I was very particular about doing it with excellence. So I understood then that I had to be kind of careful until I could figure out what was happening.
So were you accepted when you came out with a story and by your peers and everything?
Well, I didn't come out right away, and I told only a few, but I gave, each time I told someone something that was happening to me, I demonstrated it to them. So it wasn't as though my ego was out of control, I wanted attention, and I was just giving lip service to something. I would say, look what happened to me today, but it was a small group of friends. And as luck would have it, those individuals were also on a spiritual path, but I didn't know it, and they didn't know that about me before these things started happening to me, and then I had the courage to share. And so I would give them an example, and I would do something, to exhibit, and we would all, then we started helping each other, and somebody would hear something and pass it on, and it was very natural. I don't think that my reputation was damaged at that time, because there were a lot of important third-dimensional things happening to me too. Some of my students in one of my classes were some of the top people at Department of Energy. They liked my class that I was teaching at the university, and they offered me a contract to then become one of their lead instructors at Department of Energy and DOE. So then I eventually did that, and I had to get a top secret clearance. In fact, it was an above top secret clearance to be able to go into the DOE sites to train their police and security personnel primarily, and in the job task analysis and the things that I did. So I was very careful about saying a little bit, but trying not to cross that line. And that went on for a while. And then, at about that time, is when I began to receive these communications through the computer from beings who claimed that they were from another part of the universe, Arcturus, as you said earlier. And of course, I'm always a very open-minded person. I'm not going to close any door like most people do. They just shut down. That's not me. I'm always exploring. I'm always looking and wondering why. And especially if it's your personal experience and you're not losing it, well, obviously, you do want to know, and I wanted to explore. So I allowed the communications to come through. And two people, Cynthia Pulaski and Betty Rice, came over every week. We would ask questions of what we were told were these beings from Arcturus, and we put questions into the computer, and while it was coming through me, and sometimes the computer without my hands even touching the keyboard, we would get these answers that were so out there. I mean, who would make this stuff up? And they were seeing the world through different eyes. They were seeing the world through energy and color and sound and all these beautiful concepts. And so we kept bringing it through hundreds and hundreds of pages.
But how did it come through you? Did you think the thoughts, or did your hands just move?
Well, it starts with me. It started with automatic writing. And I was sitting at a table one day, and I was the university's liaison, if you will, to the community college staff, the faculty there. And the first time I was introduced to this, I was waiting to console their staff to help them get into our master's and doctorals programs. And I'm sitting in this room, this big building and conference room all by myself. No one is there, and I hear this voice, pick up a pen, pick up a pen. You know, and you look around, and what is this? No one's in the room. Well, to this day, I don't really know why I picked up the pen, but I did, and I had a tablet, ready to take notes. And all of a sudden, I saw my hands starting to move. And I started writing letters, gracefully, slowly, but I knew I could feel the energy going through me. And I knew it wasn't me writing, so I just sat there and thinking, what are you going to say? Because I was so open-minded. I'm not into fear. I don't know why, but these things don't, frighten me. And I watched, and the first word was hello. And I'm going, isn't this interesting? And it went on and on from there. Well, the bottom line is that is called automatic writing, and that was the first experience. And following that, months and months later, I was then guided, because they never told me what to do, ever. They weren't that kind of beings at all. And they never tried to manipulate me into anything. It was always, if you choose, we suggest this, but then they'd let it go. And I was guided then to go to a computer, and typewriter first, and then a computer. And at that point, whenever messages came through, because I'd been practicing it night after night for months, and because in my doctoral degree program, I had almost a minor in psychology. I didn't formalize it, but I had 25, 30 credits in classes over those years. I knew psychology, and I taught portions of behavioral psychology in the classroom to my graduate students and teachers and things. So I understood psychology. And I began to notice that in my mind, when my hand would be writing and I felt the energy going through, I could see the word inside my head, but it was in an odd place. It was over here on the left. And then I began to think, well, if I was thinking about looking at what I'm going to do tomorrow, or a vision, or trying to envision it, in my mind, the picture was here. If someone said, picture an apple tree, for example, I studied myself and I realized that I would picture something that was familiar with me right in the center of my head. So night after night, because I knew psychology and I knew the brain and what portions of the brain did what, etc., I started studying what was happening to me alone, quietly, privately. And then it became clear that this form of the signal of whatever or whoever was actually communicating with me was accessing this part of my brain. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got to the computer and my hands were on the keyboard, if I could hold my concentration here, I would be absolutely confident and assured that it wasn't my projection, my thoughts, my knowledge from the past, or anything interfering with it. As long as I could use my energy and hold it here, it was like a pure channel. And whatever came through would come through so fast, and then the answers started coming through at 60, 70, 80 words a minute. My fingers would be just flying across the keyboard because I could hear the words, da, 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 and all I did was type them without having time to think about what was coming through. It was only later, when I would read what had come through, that I would be so blown away and inspired that I began to fully accept the idea that I did not believe that this was coming from me at all, because I didn't even have any education in these areas of energy and sound and all of the things that they were sending through as to how you could use that to view life and actually change the world. It was so far beyond. But today it makes sense to me because I've been with it over 20 years.
Well, before we get into their message, what are these beings? Can you tell us about them? Have you seen them? Are they physical? Or are they in another dimension that they're here but we can't see them?
My experience is that they're primarily interdimensional beings. They claim that they come from a fifth dimensional experience. They do have the power to manifest into physical form, but they do not stay in that form too long, I think because of the amount of energy it uses, or they use, to be able to hold that shape, hold that position, for any length of time. I have seen them. Not only have they taught me over the last 20 years psychic skills and abilities to be able to journey interdimensionally and to see into other dimensions of time space, which I can now do with ease and grace, and they've taught me that, but they would also sometimes appear in your peripheral vision. People aren't aware, but everyone has this ability and this power. And what you see out of the peripheral vision, you can sometimes see things move. But when you look then with the intensity of your eyes gazing into that, it's like laser beams. You won't be able to see that dimension. But once you're trained in it and you begin to practice, then that is another way to be able to view them. They're approximately, I call them the 3-footers. They're approximately 3 feet tall, the group that connects with me. Now, there's many other people on Earth that have had similar experiences, but they have described the beings they are connected to as beings that might be 6, 7 feet tall. They might be very thin. The ones that I communicate with are a bluish green in color. They are transparent, and I don't have the picture here in Norway, but on one journey that I was guided to take one time, one of them actually appeared in the flower gardens of Singapore Gardens. And you can see right through it, the stems of the flowers, but you can clearly see its eyes, the shape of its face, and looking right through it on the etheric. Don't ask me how, that happens. We're so used to the third dimension. I can only tell you my experiences and, what they have presented to me to investigate.
But clearly they are highly evolved beings.
Yes, it is my impression, having communicated with not only beings at the fifth dimension, but 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and higher. I would say that the IQs of these beings increase based upon each dimension that they enter. So there's hope for humanity here too. Assuming someday, we will be in the 5th dimension or 6th or whatever, our souls on some level. Because they say today that humanity only uses like 5% of their brains. Right. But these beings, they look at the world so differently than the way we do that you almost surrender to the fact that they have to be so much more intelligent. They simplify things. We make things so complicated down here.
So their ego is totally gone?
I never once saw an ego in any one of them, and I've been connected to them for, 25 years, and never once have I received a communication. They seem to be sincerely in the business of helping humanity move its consciousness to a higher level. But they cannot interfere. They are not going to shove it in our faces and make us do it. Instead, they're teachers, they're guides. They say we're like your elder brothers and sisters. We've gone before you. We had help when it was our time to move into a higher consciousness. Now we're here, literally repaying the debt. People helped us, or beings helped us. Now we're helping you, because Earth now is moving on into the 5th dimension in the precession of the equinoxes in the Age of Aquarius. So now it's their turn. I bought it. Don't ask me if it's true or the right thing, but it made so much sense, and it came from my communications. It really gave me comfort, and I've not had one negative correspondence in all these years that I have been connected with them. Not one.
Yeah, I'm glad that you had contact with them because I've heard of other species like the greys who have.
Yes, I've heard of those too. Yeah. Now, I've never had communication with them that I am aware of, but I respect the people and their stories and experiences that have had contact with them, because there's too many people that are telling similar stories there. But for whatever reason, my destiny was not to be in contact with them, because they are not in my world at all. But I do believe that they are there also, and I think you have to be very, very careful before one crosses the line to be able to begin your own path on a spiritual path of communicating in all dimensions. Now, on another level, we're not to be into fear, because that old saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And when you are in the light, and when you are in the presence of God, nothing has power over you unless you give it that power. And anything in the dark agendas, dark occult, or whatever, does not have that power unless you surrender your power to that. But when you stand in that light, everything will go away, will dissipate, will disappear. And I have been tested sometimes with experiences when something would happen, and as soon as I would regain my composure, and I would literally stand and command Archangel Michael to protect me, or command, the power of Sananda, who they call Jesus the Christ, command, that energy to come around me, everything dissipated immediately. And I began to realize then, we're all tested. It's like, are we going to hold this position of really being aligned with God, or are we going to buckle under the first little test that comes to us? And my position has always been to stay in the light. And I honestly believe that's one of the reasons why I'm not. It's not that they weren't, or they were bad people that got connected or experiences with those other beings, but I don't think they fully understood the whole agenda of a spiritual path and staying in the light. And I think they succumbed to fear and doubts and chaos. And when your mind is all messed up that way, there's other things that can have power over you. They probably called it survival.
Yeah, because the thing is now that we're learning more and more that we are so powerful. Exactly. And that we actually need to focus and observe our thoughts, because if we are moving into these other dimensions, we are manifesting much quicker. Isn't that true?
That's exactly right. And it's more important for us to remember who we are, these spiritual beings who are on Earth having this earthly experience. And I think the agenda of dark forces is to try to keep people in fear so much that they cannot remember who they are. And
confuse them?
Yeah, confuse them, make them have doubts, keep them in droughts, if you will. And there's so many agendas going on Earth right now to keep people from their power. But everyone on this planet has this ability, has the power in the light, to connect with the light and to and literally stand what I would call side by side the ascended masters. I primarily communicate with them now. Those are seventh dimensional beings. And but I have gone through all of the stages, all of the layers, from spirit guides on the fifth dimension, the fourth dimension, to the fifth dimensional beings, and sixth and seventh. Everyone has a different curriculum.
So how do we deal with the ego? Okay, we know that where we're going and we want to go there and we read these books, but we still have the ego. And I've read that you have something that's called soul retrieval.
Yes.
And I thought that was very interesting, because I see, people don't want to be messed up. They want to figure things out, but we have this ego. I mean, can we lose the ego, or how do we do that?
Well, in one of my books that I wrote with Dr. Shirley McCune, it's called The Light Shall Set You Free. We did mention that in there. We brought that through from the masters, that when you're on a spiritual path, if you're really going to make it to the finish line, what we say and what the masters have said to me before, ego is dead, ego is dead, ego is dead. That means you must move into humility. You must move into serving your brothers and sisters with a loving heart. You must move into an energy field of compassion, love, and yet still stay wise, still stay prudent and discerning and be able to see everything. But when you surrender your will for the will of God, and literally every morning just say, "Dear God, show me the way. What is it that you need for me to do today?" And by restoring that prayer, that command every day, you have to renew it every day. By doing that every day, your ego then can step aside, and literally it's you making your breakfast, getting dressed, going to work, giving a speech, writing a book, doing whatever. But you've already set it up where the higher power in the light is flowing through you, guiding you and directing you because you have decreed it with the power of sound. And then by fulfilling your day that way, you actually find that you have a better day. It doesn't mean that your ego isn't involved. It means that you literally want to learn a higher curriculum. You want to learn what your higher mission is. You have faith and trust that there is a higher power out there, and you are humble enough to be able to say, "I am not everything, but show me the way." Then when these things happen, after a while, that merger with a higher force becomes your mode of operation. And what I have found, then that tempers the ego. So the ego isn't about me, look at me, look how great I am, all of these things. But instead it tempers the ego, puts you in a position where you're absolutely comfortable in serving others, serving, loving God, praising God, doing all of these things. And then all of a sudden, the ego seems to come back, but it doesn't fight for the spotlight. It doesn't fight for all of the self-grandizements and pushing people aside, trying to get to the head of the class or whatever. And as a result, then, you actually accelerate faster, higher. People look at you differently. In my opinion, I think they even like people more when they're in this unified state with the light and with the will of God. And your whole life changes. There are so many places on this spiritual journey where your life changes. You know, me being contacted that first time was only one. Or when the psychic abilities came, that was another. When I consciously decided ego is dead, that's when my life changed again. But people are afraid to go there because their ego has given them all of the things from their past, and they don't want to go there.
Do I really want to lose it? Really?
Yeah. Because this is who I am today. What if I give that up? Then what's left for me? Well, you have to be willing to literally, it's like that Indiana Jones movie, what was it, the Search of the Grail, when he had to walk across between the two cliffs, and until he put his foot down, he didn't see the platform that would support him. These are called tests of initiation. Trust, having faith. That's exactly right. And most people are too fearful. They don't want to do that because they'll only inch themselves forward like a little snail slowly moving, because they are too fearful. But once you have the courage because you are aligned and just saying, "Oh, I surrender."
So everybody can do it, and everybody can actually get in contact with these beings as well?
Oh, sure. You have to be careful what you watch for or what you ask for, because what you ask for, you will get. Even in the scriptures, it says, "Ask and ye shall receive. Knock and the door will be open." Well, these beings are so responsible. God, if God has given his word, he doesn't go back on his word. And people read it, we know it, we hear it in our churches and in our religion and that all the time. But we don't really test it all the time in our everyday world. And now a spiritual path takes you on that path, literally, to walk the talk. And so they can give lip service to it. Oh, I have faith, I have this, but can you actually do it? And this is just one of the areas where you have to show that you're going to walk your talk.
And one of the methods might be the universal laws.
Yes.
Because it was an interesting or a funny story to me, because I am doing a talk this weekend as well, and I wanted to look into the universal laws. And I was thinking, where do they come from? Who started to write about them the first time? And then I saw that they were in this book, The Light Shall Set You Free, and I saw the name, and I was thinking, haven't I seen that name before? And I think it's such a coincidence that you're sitting here having written that book. It could have been anyone. And I'm thinking I'm not going to talk about that because you can talk much more about that.
Well, but also this is what I was saying earlier too, that when I was first waking up, everything I needed was gently laid at my feet. It drops in your lap. It's up to us, though, in our free will and our egos, whether or not we're going to bite on it and if we're going to pick it up at that time. But if we don't, then it comes to you again. A few weeks later, a couple months later, gently just dropped in your lap. And that's exactly, what's happened, with you now, is that you had that interest, you opened it up to the universe, you were ready to step forward, and just because I'd written about it years ago, here comes Norma, and I'm sitting next to you.
It's magic.
Yeah, it is. I said it's the hardest journey. The spiritual path is the hardest journey you'll ever love. Because there's no training manual for it. We don't have any books to follow and things. We're creating the agenda as we go forward. And we remember it from our Akashic records, from our souls. And we keep going forward. And then we leave our legacies, with our experiences as we go forward. We're actually the creators of this dream right now, moving forward. But not us, because if I left it at that, that would be my ego. As long as we are open to the higher forces, just the Holy Spirit flowing through us, and then we go forward, then it is a co-creation with God. And this is what will help this planet and all of us evolve. And when everyone gets on board doing that, we're unstoppable. Nothing can stop the planet. We just need that 100th monkey to, kick in. And then all of a sudden it'll be like, bing, 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 and consciousness will just explode like a mushroom.
But I have to ask more about these laws, because I thought it was so brilliant. Because, we know about the law of attraction, but then it's a law of a cause and effect, and masculine and feminine. And I was thinking we should have this in school, the universal laws, because they make so sense, and they can teach you how to act in life. But have they been... I think I've read somewhere that the Egyptians were living by them as well.
Well, the Egyptians had their own culture, and they had a lot more knowledge than what I've conveyed and we've talked about in the last few minutes here. But yes, they understood all of this. I mean, I think it's because they actually came from that lost continent of Atlantis. I think they were a remnant society. Excuse me. After Atlantis went down for the final time. And all of this knowledge has been on the earth, for centuries, but not recently. It's only coming back now, but the universal laws is only one small piece of the whole puzzle. But you have to understand the laws, because this is how the universe works. And so if you understand, like, what you sow is what you reap, law of cause and effect, and you begin to apply it, thinking everything you do, if this law is really true, and I steal this pencil from this whatever, like that consciously, we can all pick something up accidentally, put it in your purse. But when you're conscious of it, then what does this mean for me next Wednesday? What will be taken from my life, or in a month from now, or in things like that? Because all energy runs in circles. When you understand that to the letter of the law, you then begin to change your life if you want to get out of the hiccups in your life, if you want to get out of the dramas. and all of the things that keep holding you back. Some people are addicted to that. They love it. Mm-hmm. They want the hardships. They want all these things because they get the comfort from the family and the members, and they live their whole life, wallowing, and they keep what you reap, or what you sow is what you reap. But then when you're on a spiritual path, you get a little tired of being stuck in the mud. Why is this happening to me again? Why can't I have my perfect this, that? Well, the reason you don't have it is because you're still putting out, through the law of cause and effect, thoughts, words, feelings, and actions that are going to come around and support your drama. You're still talking about them. You're still into fear on some level, doubts, self-doubts, whatever. When you learn that one law of many, and you begin to seriously clean up your act, that's the moment in your life when you realize that when you're on a spiritual path, your whole personality has to change. Mm-hmm. And most people don't want to get rid of who they are. Mm-hmm. Because how can you be a totally different person following the laws and these rules, but be who you are today, which is causing the problem? You cannot. So you have to take one piece at a time and say, does this mean I have to actually watch what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I tell jokes, that are crazy, stinging jokes or whatever. Or, I do this and I do that. It makes me who I am. And it's a big choice. A big choice, because you've got to that's part of your ego, letting it go. You either follow the higher laws and watch your life change into a Garden of Eden, or you stay where you are and keep complaining and creating your dramas, because either way, it'll give it to you. But it's our choice.
But I'm thinking that maybe we hold on to this because we want to be special, We don't want to be just similar. Even though we're talking about this oneness, I feel with myself, at least, that I still want to have my uniqueness. I mean, is that possible?
It's absolutely possible. You don't have to give up any of that, because it's the motive in your heart. You can be performing the same way, but maybe when you're complaining or gossiping about another, in your community or whatever, and before you start the transformation process, if you check your heart, maybe you were just gossiping about another person, for example, not thinking about the harm that it would do to them, but you wanted to be first telling a neighbor. You know how that feels sometimes? Did you hear about this? And it makes you feel, I'm the first to tell you, kind of thing. Just subtle little psychological things. And as you go through that, and you begin to get in touch with your heart, and you're thinking, that isn't the highest motive, that maybe instead, I should be, in spite of the fact that all the people are gossiping about this person, maybe I should step back and either be silent out of respect for that person. You should treat others the way you want to be treated, remembering the laws and that. And then all of a sudden, if you start behaving that way because you know the motive in your heart is no longer ego, like, oh, look what I know, and I want to share it, and not even thinking about what it's doing to the person, but suddenly from a loving heart, a compassionate heart, it will change your behavior. You can't be the same person. The other kept you in your dramas, kept you in this and that, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But when you start shifting and you're saying, maybe next time when everyone else is talking, I'm just going to remain silent. I'm going to hold the light and just cast love and just be still. And then you start that path, that's when your life changes and you change. Because it's always measured in the heart. It's always the motive in the heart. And only you and I know what the motive in the heart is. And you being in acting, you know when you play roles and scripts and that, you've got to get into that personality. But people today, their television and that, there's so many actors, they can easily fool you. You won't even know by looking in their faces what they're saying. And they can make you think that they're doing it for the highest good. But the motive in their heart might be totally different. And that's what the higher power judges. This in here.
Yeah, because it is recorded in something that's called the Archaic record.
Akashic records.
Yeah, I can't pronounce
Akashic
that.
records.
Archaic records.
That's in the soul. Mm-hmm.
And what is that? I've always been curious about those records.
Well, it's kind of like a video library, a truth library or something that we each carry, maybe like a barometer reading or something inside of us. And it's, I guess for third dimensional terms, it's like, it's a videotape of our everything we think, say, feel, do, etc., where you cannot escape it. You can't hide. In the third dimension, a lot of people lie and then they go behind the scenes, do something else. They fool lots and lots of people, and their motive is not good. They're doing it deliberately in that. But when you get to the etheric, when you get to the beings at this level, let's just say of IQ or spiritual advancement or morality in that, everything is transparent. And so what happens then is while you might have gotten away or think you've gotten away with things on the earth plane, you go to another dimension where it's really, that's where it all matters, more so. I mean, it's all important, but when you get out of embodiment then, it's like you got to pay the piper. It doesn't go away. And when you realize that, even outside of what the religious institutions are teaching, because that's why they're saying, be good, do this, do that. They're constantly trying to help us and yank us on this path. When you finally walk that talk, that's when your life changes. If we'd only maybe listened to all of the best of the religious teachings and walked the talk with those, we probably wouldn't have to go through this spiritual journey now because we would have already arrived. But the point is, the people haven't. They haven't embedded it. And now is the time going into the fifth dimension. We have to become it. There's no turning back. We're out of time. It's between the age of Pisces, moving into the age of Aquarius. Rules change. Every time there's a new age, the whole rule system changes. And we can't carry this garbage with us. The tricks and the fraud and the stuff that we try to get away with. That isn't going to hack it as we go higher.
But how will this actually happen? Will we, in a way, become less physical? And will it happen, for instance, in my lifetime? Or how will this fifth dimension play out on Earth?
It will happen person by person and then collectively as a group. And it will happen by the frequency that you carry within you, that you become, that is directed by your mind and your heart. You choose everything. I choose everything I say, think, feel, and do. And there will come a time when, and it won't be just growing older, but you will actually be eating less, because the higher your frequency resides, the less dense you become. And therefore, and I can see it with you, not that you're my interviewer and I'm trying to compliment you, but you have a glow, you have a radiance, and I'm certain other people have told you that. What that is, it's the quality of the light within you that begins to even shine through your face, your skin, the luminescence. You can tell it in the sparkling of the eyes and everything. Whereas you look at other people and they're dull and they're lifeless and they're hopeless, and you can feel it, you can see it. Well, everyone's at a different level. And you can see your own reflection of where you were at one time in the people around. You can see the reflection through people that are at your same level, and also certainly through the aspirations and hopes and dreams of what's coming in tomorrow. It's not going to happen in like a nanosecond of time and everyone's going to shift. There are individuals that are going quicker and faster than others, leading the way. But technically, we're not responsible for anyone else's life. Just like the Arcturians are not responsible for me. God is. And if we think we can save that world, and take charge and do everything, that's all ego. We don't have faith in God. There is a perfection going on down here that we must honor. We must have that faith that everything is in divine order as we go forward. And in that divine order, one by one, until, like I said earlier, the 100th monkey consciousness kicks in, and then a whole group will leap forward. It's called a quantum leap. But we can't do it until everyone's on board, or until we get enough on board. And then one by one, we pierce the veil and we lead a path, and others will follow. But it's their choice. It's their choice. But in the meantime, part of the way we get there is by loving our brothers and sisters.
And loving ourselves.
And loving ourselves. That's probably one of the hardest things to do, too. We're so hard on ourselves. We shouldn't be, but we have to learn to put ourselves in the equation. You know, but the more you align with God on a daily basis, believe it or not, that's almost like the antidote or the remedy. Because as soon as you do that every morning, it's amazing how you start loving yourself more and more. It happens in spite of you. When people can't find the answer how to do it on their own, well, just turn it over to God. You know that saying, let go and let God. Let go and let God. And if we do it constantly in our minds during the day with a sincere heart, motive again.
We could talk for hours, and I wanted to ask you about Feng Shui and everything, but I'm thinking maybe we can do that in another interview. So let's just, think that. And thank you so much for taking time, and good luck with your talks this weekend.
Well, thank you so much for having me here in Norway and interviewing me and giving me this opportunity to meet you. Good luck to you, too.
Thank you. And I'm going to America this summer, so I'm very excited about that.
Oh, wonderful. When are you going to be there?
I'm going to New York in August, and Sedona, of course. And,
Sedona, yes.
And LA and Miami. And I'll focus on people who have lost their beloved in 9/11, because I was there when it happened. So I feel very connected to the New Yorkers. And yeah, I'm excited about going to America, because I lived there for 3 years. So.
Oh, what part?
New York.
In New York, yes. Well, it's a great country. It's still, my love. I was born and raised there. And if you come by Montana or you make a pit stop there, let me know. I'd love to show you around. That's where I live now, is in Montana.
Thank you.
It's beautiful there in the mountains, and really beautiful.
I will let you know. And thank you guys for watching. And I really recommend Norma's books, especially The Light Shall Set You Free, where the 12 universal laws is there, and they're explained, and they can really help you become really who you are. Bye-bye. Much light from Tønsberg.